have a PowerPoint. That's a pretty impressive act to follow. And I'm excited to continue that discussion after this. So for those of you, I think I know everybody, but I'm Caitlin Fisher. This is Stephanie Sanders-Batt. Our FIG this semester was focused on the role of PTSD in the classroom. So that's extremely broad. Ultimately, we wanted to get to a point where we could address its role in an individual learner. If a student comes into the classroom with some level of PTSD, how it might affect their performance or their approach to the work. We also wanted to maybe address the possibility of how we can integrate PTSD into curriculum in a way that might support students who've had traumatic experiences. We haven't gotten to those things yet, but what we did this semester is we developed a survey that basically defined PTSD and tried to get at the students who may either self-identify as already having it or may have it and not quite know yet. So we tried to kind of get some self-reporting from them. And also, the second half of that was to share with them that there are some services available on campus and check how many of them may have taken advantage of those services in the past or not, and if not, why not. So one thing that we ran into when we passed these surveys out, I passed them out in all the sections of the writing workshop, and then Stephanie passed them out in both of her courses.
I passed them out actually in 4 classes and ran into an amazing discovery. The first time that I passed the surveys out, the way that we presented them was to let them know who Caitlin and I, who we are, what we're doing, and that it's very anonymous and that there's no way of identifying who the student is or anything unless they give us information because they want follow-up information. And so what we had decided to do was to pass out the surveys and say, just at the beginning of the class, just put this down with your note-taking materials. And for those of you who it relates to, fill it out. And at the end of the class, everybody, if it's not related to you, whatever, everybody just come back and put them face down on the table in the front of the room. And that way, we'll get back the ones that were filled out and the ones that weren't, and that was fine. The first class that I distributed them in, the first time I distributed them in, I should say, I got them all back blank. All of them blank. And I thought, okay, I've got to take a different angle here because this is not going to be helpful. And so, but it was shocking because, you know, I teach 2 sections of health ed, 1 section of diverse populations, 1 section of medical terminology, and it's all health related, and most of the students are in public and human services. And I just thought, oh, this is a great audience. You know, this will be really, first time I pass it out in my large section of the health class, of which I have 65 students, I got them all back blank. And I thought, what have I done wrong? So I waited a few weeks, and Caitlin and I met, and then we talked a little bit more, and I passed them out in the other classes. Then I went back to that night class, and I presented it again as if I had not presented it a few weeks earlier, and, which was really interesting. And I had a couple of, and I was a little more open, which is hard to believe because I'm so open to begin with. And I had only 1 or 2 students said, "Didn't you already do this?" And I said, "You know, I'm sorry, it's close to the end of the semester, I don't remember." I'm so sorry, I'm doing this in all my classes. So I passed it out again and I got them back again, and I got about 1/3 of the class responded. So it was that, you know, it's a topic that I think we both have learned that people don't really want to talk about, but they really want help. And many of the respondents have said, you know, yes, I've been assaulted, I've lived through trauma, but I'm not comfortable talking about it. which is very difficult for us to go one step further. And how do we get services to these students? You know, and
Or no information through the whole survey, and then
Right.
when we ask if they want information sent to them about services, they give us their email.
right, they put no, and then they
no.
give us their email for follow-up. Or we had a few of them where they put no, and then at the last, we integrated 2 other questions in there. Lori and I talked about this. Is English your primary language, your first language? And do you feel stress or discomfort, worrying, stress and anxiety, worrying about family who might live far away from you? And those were the last 2 questions on our survey. And so I had a handful of them where it was no, all the way down, and then yes, I'm terrified for my family. And then no additional information. So I don't know what we're going to do with this yet. I think I've had more, personally from my classes, I've had more surprising results than I think I expected. I did expect that there's a number of people who suffer self-diagnosed and self-medicated. We asked about self-medication, PTSD, and I had a sense there would be a fair amount of it, just based on how well I know my students. But I'm more frightened by what we have and our inability to connect. Who is this person? You know, I don't know handwriting. I do everything on Turnitin, so I can't just be a little Sherlock Holmes and figure it out. And only a handful of students, small handful of students, gave us an email because they want more services. To be fair, we also, at the beginning of the semester, I spoke in my classes about Ann Sussman. I'm her biggest fan. Y'all know who she is? Oh, see? Ann Sussman is a licensed clinical social worker who's here all day Monday, all day Thursday, is a mental health professional, can see students for up between 6 and 8 times a semester for free. It's part of the student health service fee for psychological and mental health counseling, and then if necessary, she will make referrals out. And she's amazing. I mean, she is a real gem. So I announced her at the beginning of the semester to my classes, and so several of my students, I mean, she even emailed me at one point and said, I'm the Public and Human Services mental health provider, because she got a bunch of students. So I'm hoping that some of these folks that are a little scary are already seeing her. She's available, bcccounselor@gmail.com, and she'll make appointments on Mondays and Thursdays.
And there are flyers.
And there's flyers. Yeah, she's
Downstairs,
fabulous. She's absolutely fabulous. We have a contract, BCC has a contract with Lifelong Medical. That's how we got her.
Is this a new service?
Yeah.
I don't think almost anyone knows.
I don't know.
Well, I think May Chen sent out
She mentioned at the beginning of the oncology.
she sent out a big old email.
But
So-
I knew about
so-
her, but I had a different email. Can you repeat that email?
bcccounselor@gmail.com.
bcccounselor.
So, go ahead. So do you, I know, we're okay. Okay, I'm just breathing. Okay. I'm not stressed.
Okay. I think when I passed the surveys out in the writing workshops, I got a slightly different response, I think, because it's just a lab class, it's a little more relaxed. People have time to kind of sit there anyway. It's not, it might not feel like a fishbowl because every student is kind of in their own seat. But what surprised me is that many students asked if they had to turn it in right away, and when I said no, some of them even took it home for like a week, but then they actually brought it back, which is remarkable. I mean, when I take surveys home, I don't bring them back. So I thought that was really interesting. It trickled in over the next 2.5 or 3 weeks. So people were interested, whether or not they self-identified as having it, they wanted to get the information across. Yes.
Before you gave out those surveys, did you set up the link between PTSD and learning for them? So saying how it's challenging when you're suffering with this?
No, we didn't. We had some questions in the survey that are directed toward that.
Okay.
Well, and in the introduction of the survey, it mentions it, and then we also, in the health classes, and in diverse populations, because we look at, in diverse populations, we look at high conflict personalities, personality disorders, and we look at things like PTSD as a population. So I set it up in my classes in such a way that it wasn't a new concept. And yet I wanted to personalize it and let students know that as a faculty, not just Caitlin and me, and not just the FIG, but part of the services that BCC faculty want to engage in with students is to be able to help them in all the ways possible to ensure their success. And one of those ways was to see if anybody self-identified and how could we be more helpful.
So it seems from here, I mean, we need to figure out how to quantify the data we've collected, because each survey is kind of so different. But from here, it seems like making Ann Sussman and any other services that we
Student
have
services,
more
yeah,
accessible,
DSPS.
directly accessible.
Right.
We even had a request to make the link extremely prominent on the BCC website.
Yeah, one
things like
student
that.
said, put Ann Sussman in a place by yourself on the BCC website.
Yeah.
And we also wanted to show students that faculty and student services are very united in our collective abilities to provide services for students for their success. That we weren't all little islands in the middle of the school, that we all can connect with each other. So yeah, so quantifying all this is like a whole other issue.